my God, have they improved like so much? Like all the different meat alternatives that we use, they're a different level to what they were previously. VCs want growth at all costs. Really, if you're to be a steadily growing business, they don't care. It's not in their interest. It doesn't give them the returns that they're anticipating for their investors.
Hi there, and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome Martin Holden-White, the founder of Grubby, which is the plant-based recipe box. Hey, Martin, how are you doing?
Very good. Thanks. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
having me
good.
on.
I found out about your company through my wife, who was basically seeing lots of Instagram ads coming up on her feed. So, yeah, it's
Excellent.
good to have you on the show.
Glad the targeting's working.
Working really well. So, what inspired you to create a plant-based recipe kit box? And did you have personal experience in this already? And did you
Yeah.
notice a gap in the market? What was the kind of motivation, I guess?
I tried a lot of the other recipe boxes out there. The industry was sort of fairly in its infancy anyway. I was trying to eat more plant-based and cut down on my meat intake. Going way back, I started as a chef when I was 16, part-time. So I'd sort of got, experience in the kitchen, kind of been in and around kitchens ever since, really. But even as someone who sort of had, reasonable experience, I just found cooking plant-based was an absolute nightmare, to be honest. And making it taste good was just really, really tricky. And that was sort of where the inspiration came from. It was like, well, nobody's doing a good job at this. And there's tons of people, not just vegans, who want to eat plant-based and cook it at home. And that was really the premise of it was, there's still 70% of meals in the UK are cooked at home. It's a massive market. And to have a product that was just making plant-based way easier and way more straightforward for anybody that wants to cook a bit more plants, that was like the original motivation, I guess.
Yeah. And which were the recipe boxes that you tried initially? And what were your thoughts on those companies?
Going straight in there with the competitors.
Yeah.
Love it. The competitors out there, all do a good job. Most of them have had a lot more funding than we have, an extra few zeros on top of what we've had. But they do a really good job. And as I said, I've tried them all, and Mindful Chef is probably, I guess, our closest competitor in many ways. They do a great job at the sort of healthy side of things. And I think one thing we've sort of focused on with our boxes outside of what we do, which is obviously plant-based, is portion sizes. Maybe one thing that I've previously been so frustrated by with other boxes was that portion sizes maybe aren't quite as great, and particularly for us with plant-based, some people have that perception of it not filling you up. So we always came at it from, okay, we want to make sure as a primary concern that obviously the meal's got to taste amazing, but they should also leave you feeling really satisfied and not feel like you're, just would like a little bit more. So that's something we've been focused on as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. When you are eating plant-based, you basically do need to consume more plants and, whether that's
Yeah.
legumes or rices to get everything coming through in the right way. So, yeah, I get your point. And I have noticed that before where the portion sizes have been smaller with other companies.
Mm.
And it is becoming a slightly crowded. I'm not just talking about sort of, I guess, like plant-based, but more
Yeah.
like the other people who are making stuff. So obviously Gusto and HelloFresh and Able and Co. and all these players are entering the market where they're offering these recipe boxes, organic, delivered to your home with
Mm.
recipes, but they're also selling meat and dairy, right? A lot
Mm.
of these companies as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we've always been set on the fact that we're plant-based, and we always will be. And that's like a big point of difference for us. When you do look at our competitors, yes, they all do vegan options, but I know from all of our customers' feedback that one of the biggest reasons they come to us is because they know that we've got the biggest range. So we have the largest number of vegan recipes anywhere, and that includes HelloFresh, Gusto, who are paramount about choice, but
Yeah.
we still offer the most vegan options. But also, like, we're so focused on that. That is the only thing we do. We're not trying to develop other recipes that include meat and dairy and accommodate various different other dietary persuasions. So we put a lot of time and energy into simplifying the process around vegan cooking and just really, really focusing on the food tasting amazing. And originally, it was always about using veg as our sort of as the centerpiece to the dish. So, veg, legumes, beans, pulses, and that being how we produce them. But more recently, we have obviously started to tap into the meat alternative market as well. It probably represents about 20% of our menu now. And contrary to a lot of what the media spouts, about meat alternatives being on the decline, we've actually seen a real increase in the number of people that choose those recipes. And that's why we introduced them in the first place, because the demand was there. So that's kind of been how we've thought about our meals, is just making sure that they're really, really simple and straightforward. And then over time, like the customers' feedback has just been they want speed, speed, speed. It's all about convenience.
That's awesome. And so tell me about the ingredients, both, I guess, on the veg side and what you're using for the meat alternatives as well.
Yeah, veg wise, we started out with going way back. I mean, we were packing ourselves at the beginning, so we were getting our veg from wherever we could get hold of it. Really, New Covent Garden Market. I vividly remember us getting 100 cauliflowers delivered in a black cab once when we when we were short one day. And but yeah, we've evolved a bit since then, packing ourselves and teaspooning spice blends into pods and hand packing spinach and whatnot. But we moved on to a business called Watts Farm. Farm, a family run farming business, grow a lot of different varieties of leafy greens and asparagus and various other things down in Kent. So we actually packed at their distribution centre down there to begin with. And now we've moved away from Watts. We pack up in the Midlands at a warehouse in Leicester, and are working still with a lot of like local suppliers around there. And we're basically trying to use as much as we can British. Obviously, there's challenges with seasons and with being plant based as well. You sort of at some times of the year you clearly have to go further afield for your veg. Um, but the main thing is keeping within the season of wherever you're working, and yes, trying to reduce the amount of miles that it takes to get that food to us and to the plate, but working within the seasons to like maximize the actual flavor of the veg is definitely like the most important thing for us.
Yeah, that's very cool. And is all your food or ingredients organic that you deliver, or is it a
No,
mix?
it's a mix. So we do use a lot of organic stuff. A lot of our tinned products are organic. Some of our veg is organic, depending on the time of year and where it's being produced. I mean, if we want to go down the organic sort of black hole, I suppose, there's definitely a lot of different ways of looking at it. One is that field use is often a bit more inefficient when you're getting organic produce. So if a veg gets infected by black fly or something in a field, then what can happen is that there can be nothing to solve that, and then that crop can get wasted. So you actually cause a lot of wastage through organic. It's good in some ways, but then there's that way where by not using the fertilizers, it's not as efficient and crops can get wasted. So there's different ways of looking at organic, but yeah, we're a mix.
Yeah. And what's your opinion on the fertilizers, like the pesticides, the fungicides? So I eat both, but by the way, I
Mm,
probably eat more non-organic actually in terms of what I eat. So, but I do see there's a very strong argument to switch entirely to organic, but I think
mm,
there's a big cost implication to that as well at the moment. So
yeah.
it'll be good to hear what you think, especially around health, the amount of nutrients you get from each type.
I don't have a strong enough opinion, I wouldn't say, on the actual production and yield of the veg when it's being produced organically or not, other than knowing that organic farmers do have that challenge of wasting products when things happen in their fields that they can't actually control because they don't have the pesticides to resolve it. From a nutrition point of view, there is definitely arguments that suggest that organic is higher in nutritional content. But also, if we're talking about how produce can be produced on mass scale, my guess would be that if the whole world moved to organic, it would be incredibly challenging.
Mm,
So I don't have a strong enough opinion either way, to be honest. And it's not something, and because of that, that's not been something that we've really focused on as a business. Also, from as a startup, the problem is
yeah.
that customer appetite for organic is not really that strong. If people get the choice between organic and non-organic and they're the same price, then they're going to choose organic. But
Yeah.
the reality is they're not. Organic is way more expensive, and that's also a challenge for startups as well.
Yeah. And have you noticed when you've been doing your, I guess, recipe development,
Yeah.
a difference between organic and non-organic when it comes to the taste profiles?
Personally, not really, to be blunt. I mean, I think if you're buying from a quality supplier in season, then that's where you shouldn't experience much difference. If you're buying from a supplier or a veg that is out of season and it's just not going to carry the same flavor profile. For
Yeah.
for me, the biggest thing we focus on is trying to make sure our menus are as seasonal as they can be,
Yeah.
and that everything on our menu, yes, there'll be some things that are not quite in season for whatever reason, but like the majority and the hero veg in those dishes is in season. That's the most important thing to us.
Yeah. Let's talk about, I guess, a stable veg like tomatoes. which
Yeah,
is normally not always in season, right? Especially when it comes to
yeah,
winter. But
yeah.
the way we've done our farming is that we make it available because it's kind of a staple use in a lot of recipes.
Yeah.
Do you notice a difference in seasonality of tomatoes? And I guess it depends on,
Oh,
if
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I definitely
definitely.
notice it as well.
Flavor profile of tomatoes changes massively. Yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, another thing that affects it is this, like even stuff like this is less on the topic of the veg, but we had a salt company that did like a salt tasting with us, and tomatoes was actually the veg that they used for that. And even like the different varieties of salt you use, like on those veg, can really impact like the flavor.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah,
Yeah.
in a big way. So yeah, obviously the veg is one thing, but there's other things you can do to sort of amp up those veg to make them, bring out the flavors that you need.
What was the sort of salt like sort of like Himalayan salt
Yeah, just like
versus
different forms of,
yeah,
rock salt and sea salt and
yeah,
flakes and yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting on how it combines, I guess, the acidity of
yeah,
like the salt, I guess, interacting
yeah,
with the tomato. Yeah, that's a good point. So obviously we need to sort of reduce the amount of salt we're consuming in general. Everyone does.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
I'm
but
I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm the worst for that on a personal level, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, in terms of your development, how do you do your development in the first place, and how do you come up? You've got, I think, is it over 100 recipes that you've got now?
Well, now we have closer to 500.
Oh, wow.
We've developed tons and tons of recipes. I started out as me and a guy called Ferg. He's still our head of food now, but I started playing around with ideas right in the early days of to try and understand what made plant-based cooking, simple and what ingredients were useful, and had tons and tons of failures in the kitchen because I really knew nothing about plant-based cooking. That's where I have started this journey is completely in the dark on what it is to cook good plant-based food. So me and Ferg always came at it from that angle of, okay, the main thing here is we don't want customers to miss meat. We need to create dishes that are going to really satisfy them. They're going to really pack a punch on flavor, and every ingredient we're using, we're maximizing its potential. Because not only is it a cost thing for us, the more stuff we put in those boxes, you know, the harder it is for us to make a margin. But also from a customer's point of view, when they're making those recipes, they want a simple process. They want a small number of ingredients, and they want to get something that's like that maximum sort of ratio of effort to rewards. We spent a lot of time in the kitchen together. We'd switch roles. I would write, he would make. So as Ferg was cooking, I'd be making notes and writing as he went, and then we'd switch. And now I'm sort of slightly less involved in recipe development, still do loads of tasting. And we recently brought on, well, actually, say recently, it was over a year ago, Hannah, who actually was ex Gusto. So she came with some really great ideas. But yeah, fundamentally, our recipe development process hasn't really changed in that we taste them as a team. We try them on small handfuls of customers to begin with. We tweak, we fine tune, and yeah, that's sort of how they evolve over time, really.
How are you using the meat alternatives? Are you buying external product to add to your
Yeah,
collection?
we use a number of different meat alternative suppliers, and some products are frozen, some are chilled, and yeah, we incorporate them into the dishes themselves. So yes, you can now. We have actually got a marketplace, which we can talk about in a bit more detail, for other types of plant-based products now that you can add to your box.
Oh,
But
cool.
from our actual core recipe proposition, we have things like chicken curries and whatever, where the actual meat alternatives is in the dish. So, we've started to build out a bit of a range of classics as well, like your bangers and mash with this sausages and various other dishes that actually incorporate them into them. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. Even in the time that Grubby's been going, my God, have they improved like so much? Like all the different meat alternatives that we use, they're a different level to what they were previously. And for people who've not really tried them, I genuinely really would encourage people to go out and give them a go because they're a lot better than they were.
Yeah. And so does that mean that you're delivering also chilled stroke frozen packaging then as well?
We actually don't use chilled insulation on the majority of our boxes, and that's because for most of our products we don't have to chill them, depending on the time of year. But standard veg perfectly fine to be at room temperature. But then we do chill certain items within those boxes, whether it be meat alternatives or it be a vegan cheese or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's how we go about it. But we pack in a refrigerated warehouse, and
Only the individual items that need to be packed in a chilled or frozen way will be have that. So you
yeah,
not
yeah,
necessarily having that whole
yeah.
box is quite, it's also a sustainability question then in terms of
Yeah,
that.
for sure. We've always, tried to reduce our packaging as much as we can, and that was, one of the big things at the start was can we avoid all this chilled insulation
Yeah.
that others are using? And yeah, we still have about 60% of our boxes that don't have chilled insulation in them because they don't need it.
Yeah. And who would your typical customer look like? And I'm quite interested to learn
Yeah,
about what you think about the attitudes towards especially younger generations now for
yeah.
plant-based eating.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our typical customer broadly is, and this is not to say that they're like the people who are actually eating it in the end, but we have a high percentage of female. So it's about 65-70% female of the people who purchase from our website. And they're usually between 25 and 45, albeit we have a quite sort of loyal, affluent customer base that are a bit older. So maybe sort of people like my parents who are being nagged by their children to eat a bit more plant-based and they have no idea where to start. We're a really good solution for them. But yeah, the majority of our customers sit within that category. They're active, they're eco-conscious, they care about their food choices. Ultimately, they want to remain healthy in some form or another, albeit it's not always the case from the recipes they like to choose. Um, but yeah, that's probably how I define our customer base. And then in terms of like how people's attitudes are changing towards plant based, I mean, for sure, younger generations are eating way less meat. There's just it's an undeniable fact. Like, regardless of some of the casualties that we're all aware of that there's been in the plant-based sector, the world is eating less meat, our country is eating less meat, and the next generation are eating much more plant-based. So for us, it's a great thing, and clearly that's sort of a slow burner, as it were. But I think that the trends are still heading in a really positive direction.
Yeah. What role do you think government has to promote a lot more plant-based options and especially when it comes to dietary guidelines as well? And
Yeah,
then if you look at things like obesity, obviously the health outcomes related to eating more meat and dairy that
yeah,
and then it comes on to ultra processed food as well. That's
yeah.
a
I mean,
rife also with kids.
yeah, I mean, there's obviously been this thing recently about the obesity jabs coming out, and everyone's going to have their opinions on whether that's the right or the wrong thing. And for some people, maybe it is the right thing, but it does still amaze me that we're not looking much deeper and more grassroots than that. And the governments are just ultimately they just want quick wins. They want things that are going to get the next term in an election. And the reality is that it all starts from such a young age, eating habits, and from not just schools, but people's homes. And people being educated on how to cook properly. We've basically taken off cooking from schools' curriculum. I mean, it's in some, but for me, that would be where it would start. It's getting back to basics. It's teaching kids how to
Mm,
cook and teaching kids the benefits of eating plant based and how to cook it well, and not just looking for these short term fixes that put hundreds of millions into and reduce a few people's weight and obviously reduce the burden on the NHS. But looking at it in a more long term way would be how I approach it.
yeah, yeah, it's a good point. I think when it comes to schools and education, where we used to have home cooking
Mm.
classes when I was at primary school, and that's all been scrapped. Then is what you're saying?
Well, I don't think it's not all been scrapped. They still do have um, some schools do still do have a home economics or
Yeah,
cooking on the agenda, but it's definitely not a sort of compulsory thing. And the problem is it's relatively expensive. You've got to have facilities at these schools, and it's not like a small thing to do it properly, I wouldn't say. But you know, to me, that would be a much more worthwhile use of the investment. Like when I went to university, which was sadly about 10 years ago now, it was crazy how many people that I shared halls with that had not a Scooby Doo what they were doing, in the kitchen.
yeah.
One guy tried to fry pasta when he got to university.
Oh man,
It's like
yeah,
that's the level it's at. So
yeah.
yeah,
I was quite lucky when I went to university. My mum gave me a crash course on how to cook fundamentals.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
managed to get past my uni years of like cooking, at least
yeah.
to get by.
Yeah, yeah. But that's where Grubby's great. For people who are complete novices, like I've still got friends that barely do any cooking at all, and they get Grubby regularly, probably partly because of me, but they enjoy it because it's like it's actually teaching them it's teaching them the basics of how to cook and combining flavor combinations. And they'll message me being like, "Oh yeah, I've actually cooked that one on my own now. I've that mushroom stroganoff, whatever it might be. Like I know how to cook that now because I used it with the Grubby, and so we're definitely a tool for that.
Yeah.
And I know that there's families that we've had messages from in the past that have been like, it's great. I just give my son or my daughter who's like, 12 or whatever. I just give her the bag. She just dumps it onto the chopping board, sticks her headphones on, and gets on and cooks. Like,
Oh, wow.
so there's examples like that where
Yeah.
Grubby's really good for young people to experience like cooking in a way which is just like they don't need to go and have the hassle of going to the supermarket, faffing around. They literally just got a bunch of ingredients, and then go.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting. My daughters will come over to me and show me a TikTok and say, "Oh, can we make this tonight?" Or, so
yeah,
they get a lot of inspiration just from watching social. And
yeah,
I was
definitely.
just wondering, would that make sense for you? Like, let's say if you were to put a recipe
Mm.
together as an example, in the hope that they will also buy it from you, I guess.
Yeah,
But you're kind
yeah,
of giving away your trade secrets in a way
yeah.
as
We
well.
do. Yeah, yeah. I've actually never been that. I mean, funnily enough, it's a good segue into. You probably can't see it very well, but
Oh, yeah, and I can see it now. Yeah.
yeah,
Great. Yeah.
we've just
Oh,
published our first recipe book and
congrats.
with Penguin. But onto that like aspect of like trade secrets and recipes, I've never really felt protective over it because I know that the more people that know about Grubby, the more people will find us and
Right.
giving them recipes, whether that's online or in that recipe book, which is like 60 of our best and simplest and fine-tuned over time recipes. To me, that's just great brand awareness and more people that are experiencing us as a brand. And then they'll find us eventually because they'll love the convenience of what our product offers. So I love the idea of people cooking our recipes in their own time and feeling us as a brand and us being a part of their lives.
Going back to also the education, I was at this animal aid event and they're doing a lot of great work and they have speakers that come into schools to show
Mm,
them more about animal compassion, I would say, to primary, secondary schools. We saw a video of a new piece of content they're putting out. Also, fundamentally, children need to understand where their food comes from, how
mm.
it's produced.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it coming
Definitely.
from a root? What do they need to know about animal farming? How it
Yeah.
relates to how intelligent these animals actually are?
Yeah.
How bad is it to eat meat and dairy and
Yeah.
fish?
Yeah.
So the work they're doing is really cool.
I totally agree that the more that kids could have the opportunity to experience, like whether that's going to a farm or going to food production facilities or whatever it might be, like understanding more about the supply chain of any ingredient, and how it actually gets to your supermarket and why, the apples and pears are all perfect shape and what gets thrown away and
Yeah,
all that stuff. I think, if that could be built into the curriculum, it would be amazing.
yeah. And how are you going about targeting? You mentioned 25 to 45-year-olds.
Yeah,
I,
broadly. Yeah.
you're 60% female. How are you targeting that audience from a marketing point of view? And the other question is, if they are kind of coming in learning how to cook and then suddenly they become confident, are they then switching away? So how do you keep your customers, I guess, is the question.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge. I know it's like
Yeah,
to
yeah. I mean,
follow.
retention is everybody in the
Yeah.
sector's biggest challenge. It's all we ever talk about, and we're like broken records talking about it. But we obviously use a lot of the standard channels out there. We do obviously use Meta and Facebook and Instagram ads, but more recently we've started to be a lot more targeted with our partnerships. So we've tried to agree a number of sort of strategic partnerships. One of those is with Bosch, that we've had a really good, long-standing relationship now for 2.5 years, I think,
How does
three.
that work with them?
We work with them on a collaboration of recipes. So Bosch, for those who don't know, are a big vegan influencer, written loads of cookbooks, and we're working with them. We produce a number of recipes that are in collaboration. We then sell those recipes on our site as collaboration Bosch Grubby recipes, and it's a way of obviously Bosch fans getting the opportunity to be able to cook those up without any other hassle and getting the ingredients straight to their doorstep. And then we have an agreement with them where we can market through their audiences as well. So we can acquire customers by tapping into their Instagram audience and some of their following, which is obviously really well aligned with us. So that's how the partnership essentially works.
Do
And
they also market Grubby for you on their side when they're doing their
yeah,
marketing?
yeah, exactly. So we have an agreement with them that they put out a certain amount of content for us, and we collaborate on that content. We produce a lot of that content with them and with Henry and Ian, who are really supportive. So we get the benefit of obviously tapping into their audience. They get the benefit of their brand being more widely available through us, and their recipes being put out there that more people then buy their books and that type of thing. So it's quite a it's worked really well. I think both sides are really happy with that relationship. Customers are as well, because it obviously gives customers more choice, more interesting recipes. And I mean, that sort of feeds on to the how do we retain customers? I mean, frustratingly, variety is the thing that customers want more. They want more choice. It would be great if they were able to push out the same recipes every week. It'd be fantastic for margin. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Customers want more choice. They want faster recipes. They want more cuisine types. We are, working really hard behind the scenes, basically, to develop as many great recipes as we can each year. So broadly speaking, we develop around 100 to 150 recipes a year, new recipes that is. Last year we had 3 new recipes on the menu every single week out of the 20 options that the customers have got. So they've constantly got that like drip feed of more types of recipes and more interesting stuff from cuisines from around the world, basically.
Yeah.
So we do a survey at the end of each year to understand what customers want and what cuisine types they're interested in and what types of food they want to eat more of and stuff.
What are you seeing as trends in terms of what they want for next year?
Off the top of my head, we actually did the survey a few weeks ago and we got over 600 responses, which is really good for a decent length survey. The main cuisine types that came up, top two, I think, were Greek and Japanese.
Yeah.
So and that changed from last year and changed from the year before. So I think last year top was Korean, and that's now dropped down to about 5 or something. But yeah, Greek and Japanese are the ones that people are keen to see.
So you're going to be working on those then
We'll
for next
be
year.
we'll be beavering away.
What would you say is your own personal favorite recipes?
I have a long-standing joke with Ferg and Hannah that they've managed to boot off most of the recipes that I originally developed, because mostly because they cost far too much money, and I just went for the lavish things when I was at the beginning, trying to make everything taste as amazing as it could.
Right.
But it turns out you don't necessarily need to have all those ingredients in there. But I love a miso mushroom recipe, which is like miso mushrooms and then like fries and like an Asian guacamole, which is like ginger and chili through the avocado, and then a Asian slaw on the side of it. So it's just like that, like chips, miso mushrooms, really umami, and then like the sort of slaw and the guac is just really good. That's my
That's,
favorite dish.
that sounds great.
Yeah,
And what about your colleagues? What do they like?
I mean everyone's into a mix of stuff. I'd say that colleagues and customers just being more and more drawn to the quick stuff. So
Right.
the stuff that you can just get done in like 10 minutes of prep, 10 minutes total cooking time, or it's 10 minutes prep and then you just stick it in the oven and you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
They go down really, really well. We have a lot of really quick pasta dishes. So there's like a Sicilian creamy tomato linguine that uses oatly cream, and you basically fry off the tomatoes with garlic and lots of lovely bits and pieces. And then you just build it up really, really fast with some extra veg and roast off the tomatoes that have gone into that pan, and then add the oatly cream and this linguine. It's really good.
Sounds great. Looking at the plant-based industry, been some challenges
Yeah.
with some companies. I know we've spoken before, but it'd be good to get your views now on especially all plants that did raise quite a lot of money and now have gone into administration. And I know
Mm.
JP and you do too,
Yeah.
one of the founders.
Yeah.
What's your thought on their business? What sort of hole it's left
Yeah.
for those consumers who are buying off all plants?
First and foremost, I just really feel for them as a business and as a team and as the people going into administration just before Christmas is just crap. No two ways about it. And yeah, I just really hope that all the people involved are okay, and their well-being's all good, because it would have been phenomenally challenging, probably past 6 months at least, to be in the position that they found themselves in. But like, I mean, that aside, they did so much great stuff in the space. All plants did a brilliant job in raising the profile of the sector, making plant-based food available to more people, and they were like a great business in their time. The problem they had, as is the case with so many sectors, and we weren't immune to it either, is that funding went through this cycle of it being a lot easier to come by in the early days. They started earlier than us, actually, by 2 or 3 years, I think. And I think part of what happened there was that they actually hit the funding scene at a point where it was even more sort of crazy. Valuations were even more inflated. When we came into the sector, it was after COVID. We didn't experience that COVID boom that a lot of other businesses like All Plants were lucky enough, well, lucky and unlucky in a way, to sort of endure. We were just starting at that point, so we didn't even have a website at the beginning when COVID hit. So we were sort of scrabbling, trying to get that live. We were not a D2C business to begin with. We were delivering to offices. The office thing fell apart for us, obviously, at the point that everybody left the offices. So we experienced a bit of a sort of slower and steadier beginning, albeit we grew fast, but it wasn't anywhere near as fast as the others that had really established infrastructure. They were able to push all their marketing, they had big teams and all the rest. And then that then fueled this sort of massive influx of investment into the sector. And there's obviously other sectors where that was the case as well. But there was just phenomenal sums and checks flying around for businesses that were experiencing these spikes that were, in hindsight, clearly never sustainable. To that those spikes were going to continue in the way they were. So then these businesses found themselves with tens of millions in the bank, being pushed into spending it because that's what VCs want. VCs want growth at all costs. Really, if you're to be a steadily growing business, they don't care. It's not in their interest. It doesn't give them the returns they're anticipating for their investors. So you are being pushed really, really hard on growing the business as fast as you possibly can, even if at the start of when you're trying to grow that business, your product's in its infancy, things aren't operating efficiently, you're not making good margins. It's just about growth, growth, growth. And we did find ourselves in that same position at one point, not really knowingly, but when we were growing very, very fast. I look back now and think our product was shit back then. You know, not completely, but obviously, like, it was good enough that some people were sticking around. But I look where our product is now compared to where it was then, and we'd have been much better off spending that money now than we would have been spending it back then. But that's not what investors want. So yeah, I mean, it's a roundabout way of saying that it's incredibly tough when you walk into that amount of money to operate a business in the right way for the long term benefit of all stakeholders. And I don't know enough about the ins and outs, clearly, of what happened with All Plants specifically towards the end, but it's clearly just a really tough time when you come off the back of a period like COVID and all these other things in the economy that were, afterwards, the pressure of, people not having as much money and whatnot. To then come off the back of that and be trying to sustain a massive team and a massive infrastructure and warehouse and all these things that they'd invested in to try and hold that amount there whilst orders are coming down is difficult.
Has your investors changed their outlook, and what sort of investors do you have on board at the moment with you?
Yeah, we're a totally different league in terms of how much we've raised, like way, way less than all of our competitors. We've raised, since we started the business, just over 6 million. I mean, All Plants, for perspective, was like 65, I think 67. And, you look at some of our other competitors and they're like hundreds of millions. So yeah, it's a different dynamic. Our investors are mostly angels. So we've got, I'd say, sort of one or two super angels who can write very big checks for an individual. But then we also have one VC on our cap table as well in Love Ventures. And then we also did 2 crowdfunding rounds relatively early on in the first couple of years. So we have 1,000 or so crowd investors who invested through the nominee on Crowdcube. And then the only other source of funding that we had, which was early on, was a 100k Innovate UK grant, which is a government-led scheme, which was a sustainable innovation grant, that particular one. But they've got all sorts of different grants that they give out, which is non-dilutive cash based on you executing a project that is going to benefit the UK economy in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're really good. I know some other companies, not in the food space, but like AI companies who've got money from Innovate UK. So it's
Yeah,
definitely a good way to get a grant.
it was a turning point for us, big time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing. And are you looking to raise more? What's your plans?
yeah.
I think we spoke before about you nearly reaching profitability, right? As well.
Yeah, we, as I said, went through that spell of growing probably too fast for the stage we were at. This was probably 18 months ago. And then we really sort of put the brakes on and got around the table and said, right, we need to really look at this to have a sustainable business long term. And over the last 18 months, we have changed things around massively. We, went from burning a considerable amount to having our first two profitable months in Q3 this year. And we weren't anticipating that those months would be profitable in our forecast, and we've really outdone our forecast this year, and we're closing in on profitability now, like sustainably, and we think that we'll be able to achieve that by early 2026, so in about a year's time. We have closed an investment round this year, and we're actually just going through a small top up to that round at the moment, which is all going through, which is good. So we don't have any sort of financial cash concerns as a business as it stands, and the business is heading in a really positive direction. The thing I'm most pleased about in the past year has been that we've just become much more efficient. We're making a reasonable margin on our boxes, and the whole supply chain and everything that we're doing behind the scenes is just so much better compared to where it was. And we're also acquiring customers at a more reasonable rate because we've become a lot more efficient at the channels that we're using, and targeting the channels that actually work for us, and using these partnerships to our advantage. And so, our customers are basically spending a lot more because our products have improved. And that's because, we've done all this work behind the scenes over a long time now, which is compounded with our recipe development and everything. So this year, our customers have spent 40% more than they did last year, which has meant that we've been able to acquire less customers and spend less on acquisition. But because the customers that we're getting are better quality and they're spending more at a reasonable margin, that's been what's made the difference for us this year. So that like product focus has been the thing that's long term going to keep driving us forward, is the product just constantly improving.
Yeah. And have you noticed any sort of hubs around the UK where you're seeing more customers compared to other areas? Yeah, what would you say
Yeah,
are like the top three, four, five areas that you're
yeah.
delivering to?
I mean, broadly, London. I mean, London's still about 50%, maybe slightly less, but
Yeah.
it's a big
And
part.
any particular
Um,
locations in London?
South London's pretty good. What we did, I mean, it's all around. Again, a lot of it is where you've done your marketing efforts and stuff. But
Right.
so we did quite a bit down there. But outside of London, a lot of the places you expect really: Brighton, Bristol, Cambridge, Manchester actually is good as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'd probably be the top four or five I'd mention.
Yeah, very cool. And what sort of numbers are you happy to share, whether it comes to sort of, I guess, customers, or revenue, or what like just to
Yeah,
show
yeah,
progress, I guess. Yeah,
yeah. So this year, I have to share, we'll do around 4 million in revenue.
that's
Um,
amazing.
so thanks. I mean, but the bit that's the most pleasing is the bottom line, which I can't share because we don't have the definite number yet. But
Yeah,
the bottom line compared to where it was last year is like around 80% better, which is just a huge change in the last 12 months.
right.
And that means that we have a long term, sustainable model. Over the last 2 years, we've grown about 30%, which isn't, it's good. Like it's a good bit of growth, but it's probably not what some investors would want necessarily. But we've had to become more realistic about what growth we can actually achieve with the relatively small amount of capital that we're putting into growth. So
Mm.
that's broadly where we are as a business in terms of like the last 12 months.
And what would you say
Um,
is your forecast for 2025 if you've done 4 million
yeah, yeah,
this?
yeah. We do anticipate to grow the business again, but the main thing that we're focused on is the bottom line, and that getting to a point where by the end of the year we are experiencing profitable months. We are right on that brink of breaking even, and the customers that we've acquired in these peak periods, which peak periods for us is basically winter. So you have that sort of September, October push, and then you have the January, February push. Those customers that we've acquired in those times are generating long term that profitable outcome, you know, further down the track.
Do you have an idea of how you can get to that profitability number? Is it like
Yeah,
more operational, or maybe some more like technology in the supply
yeah.
chain, that sort of stuff, or
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a bit of that for sure. There's still opportunity within our supply chain. There's definitely more efficiencies we can make, and that was a big part this year as well, as we did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But there's also the new product development we're working on. So that's digital and physical. One of those is the fact that we've recently launched a marketplace, so that customers can add products to their boxes. Also gives our products in the plant-based sector amazing chance to just get seen in front of an audience, which is perfect for them. So we have around 20 products on there at the moment, from desserts to meat alternatives to drinks to smoothies to snacks and all sorts of stuff.
So you're looking for more brands to come on board on the marketplace?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
definitely happy to speak to lots of different brands. We're
cool.
also working on a couple of our own products, which is the bit that I can't really say so much about, but things that we would, sell under our own brands within
Yeah.
that marketplace in the future.
And would you want
Um,
that to go into retail, bricks and mortar
yeah,
retail? Right.
yeah, yeah, potentially further down the line. We had a spell within Tesco with our meal kits, which didn't quite work out for various different reasons. I'm happy to go into, but it's a bit of a long story. The marketplace itself is definitely an opportunity for us to broaden our horizons. And, we've always seen recipe kits as being like the core part of our product proposition. But over time, we want to be seen as like the go-to brand for various different types of great plant-based food, whether that be in the future. I'm not saying it is, but whether it be snacks or soups or desserts or any other category, we're interested in exploring those opportunities to give our customers more convenience and more things that they can enjoy with us.
Yeah. So the recipe kit in, maybe a short version of the story, the recipe kit in Tesco's you
Yeah,
launched.
yeah,
There are companies selling more plant-based ready meals,
yeah,
and whether people regard ready meals as healthy or not healthy in
yeah,
terms of their ingredients and how they're made and the types of
yeah,
plastics and stuff. But yours was a recipe kit.
yeah.
So what happened with that then?
First and foremost, supermarkets aren't used to recipe kits.
No, I
Whether
wouldn't
it's
think they
plant.
would sell that, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, Tesco approached us without blaming them in any way. The challenge that we had was that their supply chain wasn't used to recipe kits, and it's the same. I think whichever supermarket you go into, we were going into an environment where our recipe kits were not getting out onto the shelf as quick as they should have been, so they were often taking longer than they needed to within the supply chain. Our product is relatively short shelf life, so 6 or 7 days,
Mm.
and often those products would be getting to stores, sitting in back rooms, and not making their way out onto the shelf because the product was being treated in a way which was not like a sort of sushi or a sandwich product, but it was being treated as
A
lots of
shelf
other
stable, a shelf
shelf
stable
stable.
product.
Yeah, we had a big challenge with wastage, which was
Right.
that the product was selling well and we had good sales statistics, but the real challenge we had was that the supply chain was not getting that product onto that shelf fast enough to be able to clear that stock and get
Yeah.
it through.
Even if they put it next to the veg that, or treated it like veg, but what you're saying, it needs to be treated like a chilled product in a way.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure, for sure.
just,
And I do also think there is an element of, yes, the sales were reasonable, they were fine. It wasn't, I don't think they were too put off by the sort of sales volumes, but I think there's still a massive like education piece from a customer perspective. The problem is within a supermarket, you've always got that piece of comparison. You're like sitting next to veg that you can pick up in isolation, or you can get something which is really, really convenient and is saving you time and is making it easier and is giving you a recipe and all that. But when you've got that comparison right next to everything else that you could be buying for cheaper, like it makes it a slightly more frictionful
right.
purchase.
You kind of need to think about it a lot more.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
when when you get like cut up stir fry in a bag,
yeah,
it's already prepped and maybe have some sauce or something in it. It's like
yeah,
one of those, isn't it, where are they doing it for convenience? But then I do know that recipes do drive sales outcomes for retailers, right? So
yeah,
if you've
yeah,
got something where you've got a retailer and it's got and they're promoting a certain recipe on their website or in their advertising marketing campaigns, people go to the supermarket to pick up those individual products or put it online
yeah,
in the basket. So it
yeah.
makes a lot of sense that you do have a product like that, but I guess they just need to figure out the logistics.
Yeah, the logistics and then how they position it to customers, because it needs investment, it needs time, and a lot of collaboration as well between the two sides.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So yeah, very interesting developments, especially with the marketplace and your new product that you'll be launching
And
about
the
that.
book, people
And
have
the
got to go
book.
out there and buy the book. Yeah,
And the book is available on the website, right?
yeah, it's available on our website and then across Amazon and Waterstones and various other bookstores and
Awesome.
WH Smith.
And
So
it looks quite a
yeah,
thick book. How many
yeah,
recipes do you have in there?
yeah. It's got 60 recipes, but then it's also got a load of like sort of little concoctions, so sauces and dressings and things that you can whip up very, very quickly and
Very
boost
nice.
boost a meal. So yeah, it's quite cool to finally have a copy because yeah, It's been a long time in the making.
Cool. I'll share a link of it on the show notes.
Amazing. Thanks.
Great. So thank you, Martin, for coming on the show.
No, I really appreciate having me. Thanks, Hannah.
All right, take care. See you again soon.
Cheers. Bye bye. Bye.